10 Eastern and Pacific.
Now for our What in the World segment. Last week, the U.S. Department of State released its annual report on human rights around the world. It covers nearly 200 countries, from Tunisia and Egypt and their uprisings to North Korea and Cuba and the repression in those nations. The report is an annual State Department tradition going back nearly 4 decades. And for the last 13 years, it has been followed immediately by another tradition, a rebuttal. China has released its own report on America. It says Washington is full of overcritical remarks about the world, but it turns a blind eye to its own woeful human rights situation. So let's flip through the two reports. The China section of Washington's publication begins by listing state-sponsored killings, political arrests, known cases of torture and disappearances. The State Department's report says Beijing does not respect civil liberties. It documents known restrictions on freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and censorship. Beijing's report, by contrast, talks about the Occupy Wall Street movement, that its protesters were treated in a rude and violent way. Okay, not sure how that's a human rights violation. Beijing's report points to the homicide rate in the U.S. It goes into great length on how the U.S. is a world leader in gun violence. Again, that's not really a violation of human rights. That's what human beings sometimes do with rights. It may be bad public policy, but it's not tyranny. But let's not simply dismiss Beijing's report. On the contrary, I think it would make fascinating reading for Americans, because a lot of the problems the Chinese point out are indeed real problems, whether or not they are violations of human rights. The report points out, for example, that with 5% of the world's population, we own between 35% and 50% of civilian-owned guns. That's crazy, and it should make us all pause. The report says the United States has the largest prison population in the world per capita and the highest rate of incarceration. 1 out of every 132 Americans is behind bars. This is true, and it's a terrible indictment of our justice system, one we should fix. The Chinese report criticizes us for high unemployment, for a widening gap between the rich and